let's get started. We're going to get started with a quick introduction of what Reading Coach is, and then we'll have a conversation with Kathleen. Kathleen is a CVP of Global Industry Marketing, and she's also a parent who's used Reading Coach very early in its journey. So we want to hear her story, and then we'll turn it over to a panel discussion that my fantastic co-facilitator, Emma, will do. And just by introduction, I'm Anupate. I'm a product manager. I lead the development of Reading Coach. And Emma is my co-conspirator in this amazing journey. Emma, you want to say something about yourself before we dig in?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Glad to have you all here today. We'll go into intros with all of our wonderful panelists a little bit later. But yes, I've had the joy of working with Anu on this for a number of months now. We're working on new teacher features for Reading Coach as well. And it's just been such a delight this entire journey. One of the more inspiring things I think we've probably ever worked on.
It's been amazing. All right, let's take a look at what Reading Coach is before we get into the rest of it. Right. That's Reading Coach in a nutshell. You saw a few different things. In Reading Coach, you can create AI-powered stories that give learners complete control over creating the stories. You can choose from a passage library. You can also add your own content into Read. And the reading experience is on a completely accessible reading surface called Immersive Reader that makes reading comfortable for all readers. The experience is fully guardrailed. It goes through very rigorous and has been through 4 rounds of rigorous responsible AI vets and checks, and signed off by the DSP board that is shared between Microsoft and OpenAI. So it is fully vetted. It has been in use for a while now, 15 months since preview and 4 months since it went globally accessible, which is also to say that it's available in multiple languages. You can create stories in 14 languages. You can read in 14 different English dialects in Reading Coach or pronunciations that will detect those. And you can also create and bring your own content in over 80 languages. So it is meant to be truly a multilingual reading fluency experience. With that, so that's a quick introduction about Reading Coach. I'm excited to have this conversation with Kathleen about her experience with it. Kathleen, by way of introduction, Kathleen leads our global industry marketing team. One of the industries she takes care of and champions is the education industry. Interestingly, our paths crossed because she's also the parent to James and Victoria. And she came upon Reading Coach when Reading Coach was still in private preview. It was like such wet paint. And she said, well, I'd like to use it with my son. Kathleen, tell us a little bit about your son's journey with reading and Reading Coach.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me here today. This is a topic that I am passionate about. So James went to kindergarten during the pandemic. He's 9 now. And during the pandemic, everybody wears masks. So while James was, very early in his reading journey, he couldn't see, people's lips and lips move. And one of the things that I've learned since then is that correlation between hearing sounds and seeing lips move and seeing them on paper is really important. So when James was in first grade, it was not a good experience for us. The first couple months of school were just terrible. He didn't want to go to school. He would be crying. There were days that we just kept him home because we didn't actually understand what was going on. And when we had his parent-teacher conference I think it was in November, his teacher said he was at the 10th percentile level for reading, and he just wasn't getting it. So then it started to make a little bit more sense to me. He didn't want to go to school because he couldn't read the directions that were given, not just for when they were supposed to be doing reading, but for other projects they were doing. And it was really causing him to be frustrated. He was very, very upset. So as parents, we go right into action, spring into action, hired a tutor twice a week to tutor him after school on reading. And then also he was in the reading program at school. Okay, so we go into second grade, the beginning of second grade, he's at the 20th percentile level, progress, but not, again, where we needed him to be. And then some of the same issues, continued to have the same issues. And now in second grade, in addition to doing reading coaches, we started to have him doing counseling, to kind of understand what was happening, because this was having a huge impact, not just on James at school, but his well-being as well. He stopped doing all the things that he loved to, playing with magnetiles, building his Legos. So he was really struggling both at school and then also a little bit, mentally as well. So at the end of his second grade, one of my product marketing managers was briefing me on reading coach. And I said, put me in touch with that development team. So I got in contact with Anu and said, hey, I would love to work on this and to have James use it. And the paint was still wet, and I was getting code updates, and it was pretty amazing. So at the end of second grade, I mentioned James was at the 40th percentile for reading. And over that summer, we spent every day 20 minutes of reading. And we read every night as a family before, but it was always a struggle. But for him, James is a tech kid. He loves, loves technology. So having the iPad, actually it wasn't even the iPad, it was a laptop at the time, wasn't available on the iPad. And on my laptop, having him be able to create the story and then be able to read it and see where he's doing well, where he needed to learn, it helped with his way of learning. And since it was so personalized to James, he made tremendous progress. So when he went to school for his reading, placement at the beginning of the summer, so just after using Reading Coach for 3 months, he tested out of third grade. And I'm so proud to say that James now is reading at an 8th grade level. He's 9 years old, and at a 12th grade level for comprehension. So it just had a huge impact on James from him, at school and being able to read, but then also, on him mentally as well. He's back to being my happy little boy. And so I just thank you to the Reading Coach team, because it's been truly amazing and remarkable for James and our family.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Kathleen. You've told me that story a few times, and it gets me every single time. We're seeing in the chat, Jessica's calling out as well, that so many elements of that story are so true for so many parents. What was it like for you as a parent? You've sort of hit upon that, but there's a behind the scenes going on for you as a parent and as a family as well as you're supporting James. What was that like, and how is it now?
Oh gosh, it was hard. It was really hard back then. And my husband and I were just talking about this just last week or so, is that you don't realize how much it impacts the entire family. We were both under so much stress. Because as a parent, you want to help your child. You want them to do well. You think you're giving them all the tools they need. We were privileged enough to be able to pay for private tutors. He's getting extra help in school. But it was so stressful for each of us personally, for Victoria, that we didn't realize how much it impacted us until we can look back now. And once he was in a better space, our whole family is thriving now, because it's just, as a mom, my kids are my first job. They are my main job. They are my main priority. And when they're hurting and when they're not doing well, it just brings the whole family down. So I'm proud to say that our family's in a completely different spot now, and everybody's thriving now, which is great.
That's so terrific to hear. I think there's I remember chatting with James at one point when he was using it, and I was so nervous because reading coach was really wet at that point. So wet. There were some features he liked better than others, isn't he? And he's used it over time, and hopefully he doesn't have to use it much now because he's a proficient reader. What are some things he really liked about it? Are there certain features he wished that he really enjoyed, others that he wanted? Can you shine a light on that?
Yeah, well, James loved being an early beta tester and loves being able to tell people that he gave feedback to the Microsoft development team. But some of the things he liked is he loved that he could write his own story.
Yeah.
So he really liked being able to choose the story that he was writing, that he wanted a story about a dog that was going into space, that was, chasing a cat. I can't remember all of them now, but something like that. So if he felt he had control over it. So he really liked being able to create, like almost being like an artist, with coming up with the story. He really liked that. He liked being able to see his progress, and see, how he was doing. I remember in one of our early meetings with him, he said he'd like to have more chapters, and I think you implemented that as a feature for him being able to have more than one chapter. And one of the other things, which is, it's not a feature of Reading Coach, but it was something I missed as a parent, is my son loves technology. And yes, he reads actual books. But for him, when he was at that point where he was struggling a bit, I needed to lean into James. And James loved that he could do it on a piece of tech as well. So the combination of him having control over what he was reading and writing the story, and then using it in a piece of technology that was more like, that's how he likes to learn.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. You reminded me that we didn't have multi-chapter stories then. And James did say to me, and it was only one chapter, and it's not done. And we did. Reading Coach allows you to pick your own path through it. So when you finish one chapter, it asks you what should happen in the next chapter. And then we dynamically use AI in a very safe way, and we generate the next chapter. And so you go on your own journey. You're sort of writing the story, as you said, like James said it yourself. Kathleen, zooming out for a moment, because you are our global industry marketing lead. As the world embraces AI, what do you see as the opportunity really for us to change education and to close learning gaps, which are so persistent even today?
Yeah, I was actually just looking at stats with my education team on the use of AI in education, or not in education, by students today, and it's at 88% of it being used, not particularly in schools, but people who consider themselves to be a student are using AI today. And I think the opportunity to provide personalized learning, no matter whether you're in kindergarten, whether you're in seventh grade, whether you're in college, the opportunity to have that personalized learning path is so powerful. Look at, I had hired a tutor for my son, for him to be able to get the extra help that he needed. But not everybody can afford that. But with AI and with tools like Reading Coach and the other learning accelerators are out there, we are making education more accessible, and we're making personalized learning paths more accessible. And I think that's really going to really help the students, no matter what their means are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We on the product team, we often talk about having the opportunity to solve the two sigma problem, right? Can we make learning truly personalized and equitable at the same time at scale? That's the opportunity. So thank you for all the support, the championing, for being here with us and for sharing your journey with James. Much appreciated, Kathleen.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there are other stories about Reading Coach and its effect on classrooms and parents and families. Recently, Microsoft's magazine Unlocked put out a powerful story about Reading Coach and the many stories we've heard from people. I'll put a link to it in the chat. Check it out. Oh, thank you, Emma. Yeah, check it out. There's some incredible ways in which this tool is changing people's lives. It might also give you tips on the ways in which you may want to lean in and use it, because some of our users have been incredibly creative, and you're going to hear from our panelists in just a moment, because they've been amazingly creative and used the tool in ways we did not expect. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Emma and our panelists to share tips from our educators, librarians, and other parents on how they're using Reading Coach and what they're doing for summer reading this year. All right, take it away, Emma.
Thank you, Anu, and hello, panelists. Anu, do we have a slide with everyone's names?
Absolutely, we do. I'm switching to it.
Let's jump there and start with a quick round of introductions. We are so lucky to have so many different perspectives here in the virtual room today. We have educators, parents, educators who are parents, and even the voice of a librarian to help us sort of walk through all of the different facets of Reading Coach and the different ways that we might try to use it to empower better summer reading, but also just better reading practice in general. And to start, I would love for everyone to introduce themselves and share their favorite or a favorite Reading Coach moment. We'll dive into each of your individual stories after that. Martin, do you want to kick us off? We might have some connectivity issues with Martin. Is he frozen for anybody else?
Yes.
All right, Sasha.
Sorry, Emma, I'm here.
We gotcha. All right, go ahead, Martin.
I didn't hear my name. First off, I'd like to say, hello, America. I'm calling from Sweden in Europe, and this is awesome to be joining this panel. For daily work, I work as a technology coach in my municipality. I work in the K-12 schools and help to develop use of Microsoft tools in our education. So my favorite about the reading course, that's probably the joy the kids show when they, like Kathleen told us, creating their own stories, how they are their own makers of reading. That's awesome to see each time I visit a classroom. So
I love that. And your job is to introduce these tools to classrooms and to work with teachers so that get to see this over and over again, I bet.
I'm privileged to get paid for this every day.
You have an extremely cool job.
Yeah.
Sasha, can you introduce yourself? I know we'll dive into the story of your twins and how they've used Reading Coach when we come back around, but your top Reading Coach moment, who you are, why you're here.
My name is Sasha. Nice meeting everyone here. My name is Sasha. I'm based in Los Angeles. I actually run a technology company, quite large, so I'm very close to the technology. So when I discovered from the former colleague of mine, actually, I think she works now at Microsoft. So she posted something about Reading Coach, and I decided, why not to try it? So that's how I got introduced. I think it was just a little over a year, so quite early stage of the Reading Coach. So my most, I guess, what I'm excited about Reading Coach is the independence it gives to my kids to learn by themselves and remove that frustration when someone's trying to correct them. So for me, it's mostly, that is the most exciting feature for me.
Awesome. I love that. Louisa, who are you? What's your favorite Reading Coach moment?
Hello, hi. My name is Louisa Glosso. I'm the head of English and Drama at St. Piran's School in Maidenhead, Berkshire in the UK. And I would say one of the most exciting features of Reading Coach is for pupils to purely read for pleasure, independence and nourishment, and for them to feel empowered and engaged in their own right.
I love that. And we'll dive into the different things you've managed to do in your classroom in a little bit here. Now, Isabel, you come from a librarian's perspective.
Yes.
Who are you? What's your role? Why are you here?
Hi. So I work at Microsoft, and Microsoft has a library, has a corporate library. We have 4 physical libraries around the world. And so we mainly support, obviously, our employees. But we recently opened a kids corner. So we recently expanded our collections for children. It's a STEM library. And I was introduced to Reading Coach through various different ways internally, and really excited as a librarian, especially to allow kids to discover the joy of reading. I mean, that's really the ultimate thing. But I think the thing that's most exciting to me about is all the different languages that it's offered in. It's really going to make it accessible to so many people that have been kind of just left out of this. And especially for those in the U.S. where, English is not your first language, having all of these different languages and support for parents and children and librarians as well, I think is a real game changer. So I'm really happy and excited to be a part of it.
Thank you for being here. I'm curious, we opened up with Kathleen's perspective as a parent. Continuing along that thread, Sasha, from the very, very early days, you and your family were involved with testing and piloting Reading Coach. Your two sons have had very different experiences with the app so far, but I'm wondering if you can tell us the story of Zach and then tell us how Liam's using Reading Coach right now as well.
Yeah, definitely. Again, the way I discovered Reading Coach was on my own type of thing, going on LinkedIn, seeing recommendation and actually downloading. I don't work for Microsoft. I didn't have that inside knowledge or anyone recommended to me. It was just something I saw and I felt like, oh yeah, that's interesting to try. And I'm always open to try these new ideas. So that's how I actually came to use Reading Coach. And then I saw the potential for my son, first Zach. I think Zach was at that age, I think he was 5 years old at that time. He had trouble pronouncing words clearly. So he would kind of mumble a little bit. And because of that, only his twin, I'm a father of twins, they were 5 years old, only really his twin could understand very well what he's saying. And we had to ask him a lot of times, what is Zach saying? Liam, what is Zach saying? Because if you ask Zach, he would repeat it once, but if you ask again, he gets frustrated and it basically doesn't want to tell and can result in tears. So we actually had to put him in speech therapy to improve that. And we saw that started affecting his character. He kind of becomes more shy, doesn't want to explain things because it's a point of frustration for him. So whenever we found the Reading Coach, again, reading the books was the same. Like we have to correct him when we read in the evenings, before bed. When he tries to read, we have to constantly correct him about how to pronounce certain things. And again, it became kind of this point of frustration. And we had to be very deliberate. When are we going to read? How are we going to correct him? What Reading Coach allowed us to do is basically give them that application. At first, he would go to the computer, I would set it up, and he would start reading. And the Reading Coach would actually measure his level of pronunciation and gives him different pointers of how to do that. And as soon as he learned how to repeat it and how to basically understanding how the correction works, we saw the very tremendous improvements in how he pronounces words. And with that, his reading improved, his confidence improved. And when he actually was in first grade, which is this school year, at the beginning, within 2 months, he got reading awards. Basically, he got the Radiant Reader Award. So he went from speech therapy to award at school in a matter of, I think it was 6 months or so. Wow. So it was very exciting news for us. And he became reading other books. He became reading everything he could get a hold of. Everywhere. He got excited because there is a lot of things that you can learn. And of course, it helped him playing his games because he could read instructions. It unlocked the whole world for him, in our view. In regards to Liam, so Liam had no problem with pronunciation. He pronounces words super clearly, but he still had a problem of reading, like actually connecting a lot of words together and actually understanding what he's reading. But because Liam we are in Los Angeles, a land of Hollywood, so he's an actor. He goes and he has an acting school and he has a lot of auditions that he has to go to. And auditions usually it involves doing some kind of script, some kind of monologue. And he needs to practice. He needs to memorize that monologue. And that becomes a challenge for him when you can't read. So what we did with Reading Coach is that we'll take a screenshot of monologue, load into the Reading Coach, and off he goes. He practices until he actually learns the script. And he can repeat, he can adjust his enthusiasm to it, and it's all can be measurable by Reading Coach. So it was a tremendous help for us in that regards. So yeah, here's the story.
Thank you for sharing that. I remember the team celebrating when we got the email from your family saying, by the way, Zach has won the Radiant Reader Award. And I can also say with confidence, we didn't expect that people might use it to learn lines. And that's so creative. And I think continuing along on that thread, Louisa, you've had all kinds of creative ways of integrating Reading Coach into your classroom. I know you're here as an educator and also as a parent. You've used it with your children as well. I'm curious, and we had a question in the chat about this earlier. How do you see the connection between Reading Coach and a love of reading or a transfer into the physical book world in your experience?
Hello, yes. So as an educator, we have developed into Reading Coach through Reading Progress. So as a Microsoft Showcase school, we have implemented Reading Progress along with Reading Coach as part of our curriculum and our homework tasks for the children, certainly to develop their reading fluency and expression, as well as their comprehension. We see the difference between Reading Progress as an educator application, whereas we see the Reading Coach product and app as a tool for the pupils, a tool for the children to engage in very separately from the prescribed homework tasks and curriculum tasks. We wanted to make sure that these two products actually celebrate different areas of the children's needs and learning and interests when it comes to reading, and looking for their own excitement and storytelling and knowledge about characters and plots, and actually having that discussion around what stories and reading is truly about. So we have developed very clearly the links between the two, but also saying and allowing our children to be very open and free and questionable about their own interests and what makes their love really come through, even if they are possibly struggling a little bit with the interest side of it. This is where we introduce Reading Coach and actually have Reading Coach implemented within our reading sessions weekly within our school, and as well as supporting it at home as well with parents. But we really love the way that actually Reading Coach is so individual to every single person. So whether you have an advanced reader who just wants to explore and open up characters and include their own passage and use it as a proofreading tool, to the children who actually would like to develop slowly throughout their own little progress and their process of actually finding their own comfort zone when it comes to reading, and also thinking about the accessibility tools that are offered within Reading Coach and how those can really support, as I said, advanced readers or those readers who are just starting to find their own journey when it comes to supporting what is so special to them. And when we talk about stories as parents and educators, Reading Coach really highlights that for us, and for me, certainly as a parent and as an educator in the learning environment. You know, reading should be celebrated aloud. It should be heard. It should be discussed. we have something that's called Connecting Classrooms within our school, where we have our older children celebrating stories with our younger years, and actually having that dialogue, having that pupil voice within it, and our younger children looking up to our older children, and taking the lead really from them. And actually using new initiatives when it comes to what can Reading Coach actually do. Is it a tool where it can allow children to use immersive reader and those accessibility tools to personalize reading? Or is it a way that we can use it to support writing, support critical thinking, really flourish the ideas surrounding literacy and what it's truly about?
And you're so right to call out those accessibility tools that are built in as well. People on the call might have seen Immersive Reader. It's in Edge, it's in Outlook, it's in Word, it's in Teams. This is something that has shown up across Microsoft products now, but is also embedded right into Reading Coach. And so from integrating different fonts like Sitco, which was optimized for folks with dyslexia, to doing a line focus or changing from dark mode to light mode. There are so many different things you can do in Immersive Reader that allow you to customize Reading Coach on your end as well. Now, we visited Louisa's classroom in January. Anu and I and the product. No, Anu was there in spirit. I was sending you so many like updates and texts as things were going on. Louisa's students showed us around her class, and she had 3 different stations set up. And one of them had students with their stories written out in a notebook, and they had typed them into Reading Coach and were reading them out loud as a proofreading technique. And then in the middle table group, it was discussing the story. So each child had their laptop into their headset, and they were reading into Reading Coach and then comparing which characters they were choosing to unlock. And as soon as we came in, I think one kid stood up and said, "You got 100%." And then someone else said, "I just unlocked the wolf." And it was so fun to see the discourse that came along with that. And like you said, Louisa, it is about stories being shared and the connection, the human connection that comes along with that. I think, Sasha, you mentioned as well, having a conversation with your kid afterwards about the story they've read is such a great way to synthesize that information and to build out those literacy skills. Now, Isabel, we've talked a lot about parents who are able to, offer these devices to children at home. We've talked about schools that might have computers and iPads at their disposal. I think public libraries also can play a really important role in making this tool more accessible to people. And I'm curious what your library perspective would be on that.
Yeah, and I also wanted to just take a minute to answer the question also about the transfer from Reading Coach to a physical book. That's kind of like the whole point, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you really want children to develop that love of reading so that they have the confidence to go into a library and pick whatever book they want to read and feel like they can read it. And so, that I think there's a direct bridge there. And I'd actually be really interested to know, Sasha, from your perspective, also from your kiddos, how do they feel about physical books? Is that something that they go after and try to find as well? Do they want to read themselves, or are they really attached to the digital? Because these kids are all born digital, right? So I'm curious to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, for them, it's not even that much of a difference. I don't think they look at it as a digital versus not digital. They love books. They go in the library, they pick up the books. The problem is for them is that the books usually that they give them at school is a little bit below what they can read. So they read it in a matter of, minutes, and they're done with the book, and they have a whole book for a whole week. But they do come home and say, "Hey, I want to buy this book," and they go online and choose the book, and they actually shop for books and are very excited when they get them. So for them, it's no difference, digital and not digital. They just like reading and learning new stories. That's the point for them, is getting the stories and learning about things. That's all they care about.
Yeah, the medium is not as important. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But so I think that in the library specifically, the opportunities there are, I mean, not only does the library have devices where children can actually sit, but librarians can develop programs specifically around that, not just in the summer, but all year round, when they come in the afternoon or when they come in during the weekends with their parents. And, we can develop programming around that that's more structured, even though it's very personalized. It's got this great opportunity to be structured and personalized at the same time. Sometimes people think those two things are separate from each other, but they really aren't. I mean, you can support both in those ways. And I think, kids like structure as well. So discovering things by yourself doesn't mean that you can't have, like, we're going to do this at 7 or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever, everybody come. And then afterwards you have a discussion and people share their stories, so much like in Louisa's classroom where they talk about it afterwards. That's the kind of thing you want. And story hour changes, right? I mean, the whole concept of sitting in a circle and having one person read to you is wonderful. And it's not that we want to take away from that. We still would like to do that, but it also excludes a lot of children for which that might be a difficult environment to sit. They might be difficult sitting. They might have different hearing or seeing abilities. And so this kind of democratizes this access to reading across the board to all kinds of learners and all kinds of people. And the library can provide that sort of environment, that safe environment where there's another discovery on another shelf just around the corner. And I think that's the really exciting part.
We were all debriefing after our first kick at the can together, meeting in a forum as the 6 of us. And something that came up really was the idea that Reading Coach inspiring a love of learning outside of the app is an intentional goal of the product. And so our design researchers spent months developing a framework for engagement rather than addiction, for intrinsic rather than extrinsic motivation. And you can see that in the app in the way that the rewards are laid out. And so Anu, feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything here. But one of my favorite examples of this is how when you read 20 minutes, you can unlock a new character or a new setting, and you have agency over which one. It'll suggest one and you can always change it. You can swap it for something else. But that reward isn't in the form of coins that you can use to decorate some imaginary bedroom. It's not in the form of some other sort of extrinsically tied activity. It really is like this new character or setting only has value if you create a new story with it. It's tied back into the act of reading and the curiosity that comes with wanting to know what happens next with new characters and new places. And that is no accident. It was months and months and months of research on the parts of our teams to make sure that whatever we're developing isn't pulling children back into the app for the app's sake, but for the love of reading's sake. And that's the kind of transfer that we're lucky enough to be seeing. And maybe lucky is the wrong word because it was intentional, but that we're very glad to be seeing because that was the goal in terms of how the app was built. And so we've spoken to educators who said kids who start on Reading Coach, they're bringing their books, their physical books out to recess now. And now they're having conversations about, when are we reading and are we doing it for fun now? And isn't that so exciting? What a new world to open up for people. And so much of this comes down to, it's stories, right? The books are stories. We're all telling stories. Martin, every time you introduce Reading Coach to a new educator or a new classroom in your district, you're telling stories as well about why it's worth investing in and what they should be thinking about in the context of Reading Coach. And you mentioned to us the other day, part of the story you tell the educators is about the role of the parent in supporting the parent or the guardian in supporting a learner with this app. I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about the advice that you give them, and potentially also if you could speak to the parents and guardians on the call right now, any advice you would give them directly.
Yes. When I meet my colleagues around our schools, I encourage them to use this tool in that way that they should provide this knowledge to their guardians as well, so that this tool can be used at home to inspire, engage, and help the children to develop these new skills. And like we heard, it's not about digital or the physical, it's the mix, or so it's not black or white. You need to choose what the kids like to use for the moment and encourage that by buying books, go to a library, and so on. So that's, yeah, so we practice to use it at school, and we inform our guardians that this are available for our all kids. Not all the kids that only have Microsoft 365 accounts, so everyone can use it. So yeah, that's my main goal, and this gives the guardians and parents a new way of following up, tracking their child's development, and also encouraging reading, and that's a nice thing to have, I think. And it's a nice tool, and what I heard, it's positive feedback from both the guardians and parents and my colleagues as well, and for sure the students, of course. They like this a lot. So yeah.
You mentioned as well, and this is something that we haven't covered yet, just the age range that the people should be thinking about with Reading Coach. Many people see it for the first time and assume it is just for folks who are learning a language for the first time in those earlier years of school. What has your experience been encouraging Reading Coach usage beyond that age?
I think this is a language tool for development for everyone. Not it would be nice for me to use this for a while, I think, to practice my English maybe, and I encourage my colleagues that are teaching second or third language. In Sweden, the kids from 12 years old choose another or the third language. So these teachers, I encourage, show the kids that we have this tool, so they can practice and develop their speaking and reading at home. Because, like Louisa said, we when we would like to track, when we as a teacher would like to track the development, we usually use reading progress instead. But this Reading Coach is a nice tool for the kids to use at home.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a very good point, I think, for us to take from this as well. It's just the general applicability of the tool. I think we've reached a point where we are going to do our lightning round of, if you want the people on this call or watching this recording one day to take one thing away from the past 45 minutes, what would that be and why? Martin, we can start with you and we can go counterclockwise on my screen. So Martin, Louisa, Sasha, Isabel, one piece of advice.
My advice would be to try this out. Don't wait. Learn how to use the functions, see what happens when you click on something, and encourage your kids, neighbors, folks, everyone to try this out. Make a challenge this summer to learn a new language, maybe.
Thank you, Martin. Louisa, what would you say?
My advice really is to actually understand that this product, this app, is actually used, I would say, as like that snapshot engagement of purposeful reading that you can delve into with your children, as a guardian, as a parent, as an educator, having those short, sharp snapshots of that reading, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, something, just to have that engagement and really have that digital tool at the fingertips for all pupils of all ages, of all abilities, and to actually acknowledge that throughout the summer, it really isn't a chore. It's that excitement, it's that empowerment, it's that nourishment. And I think it's really important to actually heighten the comment of the physical books and the digital. It really isn't. It's what medium is actually linked and develops that love of reading and that love of literacy at the end of the day. And I think the comments on here that says, oh, you know, how do you develop from the digital side to the physical side? I think it's just blended totally with the blended learning, and I think pupils don't see reading as, oh, I'm reading on a computer or I'm reading on a device or it is a digital aspect. Reading is reading. If they can read in many different ways, listening to audiobooks, that's reading. If it's reading on an iPad, if it's reading on a laptop, if it's reading on a Surface, if it's reading you know, from a graphic novel, if it's reading from a physical book, a storybook, a picture book. I think it just celebrates absolutely everything, and having that snapshot of reading really is truthful and developmental.
Thank you, Louisa. Sasha, what would you say to the parents and guardians on the call?
Well, I think I go in same line as Martin. I mean, just try it. The kids, you know, adopt to technology very well, and they'll adopt to this probably much quicker than the parents do. Just show them and try it out, and then make it engaging for them. Don't just, you know, ask them the questions about the story, you know, track their progress, track how fast they read, how good accuracy is. They usually like those challenges, and they'll see themselves, okay, yeah, I read it, you know, 20% faster, or my accuracy is now 100%. I mean, they're very excited about that. And then there is a lot of ways of how they can progress. There is more complicated stories. There is self-creating stories. All that is very usually very motivating for kids.
Isabel, what would you leave our guardians in the audience with?
I mean, I think the obvious is that it's free and it's fun, right? And how many things like that can you find that give the gift of reading to a child? I mean, what better thing is there than to give a child that sort of freedom to find themselves in stories and to discover other worlds and to build hope, especially in this TikTok world where everything is 5 minutes, you know, and there's, you know, they're overwhelmed with these things. To give them an opportunity to find some depth and confidence in the ability to do that. You know, I mean, I can't imagine any better thing. And I'm so proud of Microsoft to develop this and to have spent the time. I'm really interested. Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing the research behind it and how intentional it was, because it makes a huge difference. Because people hear gamification, oh, it's just another app for gamification, but this is not gamification, right, at all. It was intentional. And so, you know, that I think that makes a really big difference in how one should consider whether or not they want to spend the time with their children using this.
Thank you. Can everyone join me in thanking our incredible panelists for their time today? Martin, Isabel, Louisa, Sasha, your stories are all so unique and so different. Those perspectives you bring are so valuable. You can see all the applause coming from the live chat members. And I know, of course, that folks catching up on the recording will be just as grateful. Thank you for making this product what it is, for carrying the torch forward, or for informing it from the very beginning. Thank you, Anu, our fearless leader. I think you have some closing remarks for everybody. Is that right?
Yeah, let's do a few things. So thank you so much to our panelists. They're joining from Europe. It's late in the night. It's almost 10 o'clock. For Martin, it's probably similar for Louisa. So thank you for joining us and for sharing your stories and for taking time during your working days, Isabella and Sasha. Much appreciated. And thank you, Emma, as always. Let's close with a few things. I'm going to leave the group with a host of resources. So you have a starting point for your journey. You've heard about Reading Coach. You've heard so many different things. Here are a few different things. I'll put the whole set of links in the chat. So if you're somebody who wants to grab them all in one go, here they are. And I'll format that better in just a moment. But here it's you to start with Reading Coach, just simply go to coach.microsoft.com. You'll need an MSA or a personal account to log in. Just click Get Started. If you don't have one, just create one on the next dialog that shows up after clicking Get Started and use the product. Now, we're in the Redmond area. I noticed on the call there are a lot of people who are Microsoft folks. Some of them look like they're located here. And there are other parts of the world where school districts use Microsoft products. So it is possible that your learner has a Microsoft account from school. They can also use that to log in. Their school actually does not need to do anything to enable Reading Coach. It's enabled, deployed, and available to everybody in the world that uses Microsoft, school identities or personal identities for free. So just go ahead and use it. So that's how to get started. We are working with Stanford to do a comprehensive quantitative and qualitative study on the efficacy of Reading Coach. We have over 15 months heard over and over that using Reading Coach anywhere between 3 to 6 months demonstrates results in demonstrably significant reading gains, but we're trying to verify that with Stanford. They have a ROAR study that is going on. So in addition to using Reading Coach this summer, if your student or learner participates in the study, they will begin to see their progress based on Stanford's best practice research-vetted ROAR platform and approach. So this is an additional way for you to get insights on your learners' reading throughout the summer. So that study is underway. Sign up for it. It's completely free. And you'll get the insights from that system. There are a number of different materials available for you. We have a flyer, share Reading Coach with others, give them the website link, of course. There's a bingo card in there. So it's week 3 in the summer and your child is reading, but they're like, oh, what am I going to read again? A Dog in Space? No, we have some bingo cards and some prompts for them to choose different adventures throughout Reading Coach. So use that. There's a deck in there for any educators on the call or any parents who want to tell their school about Reading Coach. There's a deck in there. Just share that with them. It's publicly accessible, so people can use that. And there's more materials at ek.ms/reading coach materials. Finally, we're at that stage in the Reading Coach journey where Emma and I will be looking very keenly to our community. We always listen and build products with community, but we're really listening for what's working. What do people really come to this product for? What else do they want from it? And so give us some feedback. We would love to hear from you. Use the product and then give us feedback. So it's a 5-minute survey. I literally time myself because I know what it's like when you click on one of those survey things and you go, oh my God. So it should take no more than 5 minutes to complete the survey. So please do the survey and give us some feedback. It will inform what we do with the product next. So thank you all for joining today. Thank you for making the time and for the powerful stories. Have a great summer. Have a great holiday season if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. And hope you enjoy reading with Reading Coach.